5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cool. All right, it just came up on mine, so I think
Oh,
we're
you
good.
got a thumbnail this time.
Yeah, I threw a thumbnail up. What do you think?
Fuck, that's hot.
Yeah. Hopefully our subscribers see the thumbnail and it gets them to jump on. So
Yo,
while you do
actually
the
though,
Discord,
what's kind of crazy is I was just I turned the stream on. We were already live as you were saying 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
oh really? Oh, Riverside is crazy.
Yeah.
All right.
you don't
Well, we
you
do
don't
have a
fall.
concurrent viewer. That must be you. But go ahead and plug it into the Discord, and I'll talk to anybody that's joining.
Yes. At everyone.
We're going to go ahead and get started here in a minute with our playthrough of Heavy Rain. Man, a game with quite a reputation, so it should be an exciting episode for those of you just joining us right now. Thousands and thousands of people, for sure. I see my quality dipping a little bit.
It's fine. It's expected. Let's see.
All right,
I think we're good.
all right. Let's go ahead and clap in.
All right. Are you
Three-
monitoring the chat?
I am.
All right, cool.
3, 2, 1. All right, close enough.
Good.
Cool. Kick us off.
All right. Ah! Cool. Hey everyone, it's Matt,
And this is Lucas,
and this is Thanks for Playing.
the podcast where we break down the most iconic video games the world has to offer. For those watching the live stream, you can clearly see Matt back up before he does the yelp. Solid move.
Yes, from consistent feedback from Lucas and producer Sam, I have I'm loud. I'm loud. And that's where we've gotten. And I may be loud, but I think they're still thankful to have me around. Which reminds me, Lucas, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Hot dog.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh.
Yeah. We're recording
Oh.
this just a few days before Thanksgiving, but for those of
Yeah.
you listening to the podcast later, obviously on Thursday, it is Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to you.
Yes.
Hopefully you're waking up, it's your day off, and you're going to go over to your families in a few hours, and you're just listening to a little bit of Thanks for Playing to get ready for your day.
Or perhaps you're falling asleep into a food coma after mountains of stuffing and turkey and whatever else people eat these days on Thanksgiving. Ham, potatoes, yams.
Ooh. What's your favorite Thanksgiving food item?
Honestly, man, it's got to be stuffing.
Really? Like you just assume that that made it sound like it's a very obvious choice. I feel like
I thought it is.
is it?
Dude, stuffing has so much utility.
Okay, can you want to explain the meta of
I
stuffing?
mean, it's great with like mixing it with any of the dishes that are typically involved in Thanksgiving, whether that's turkey, the potatoes, the yams, whatever it may be. It's perfect the next day as like its own separate dish. It's perfect as a combination for a breakfast dish. Hear me out.
Wow.
You get your stuffing, warm it up in a pan, fry an egg, put it on top of the stuffing, and drizzle on a little gravy. Lucas,
Okay, that sounds
you're in
pretty
for a
good.
good time.
I've never thought about doing that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I cook.
Okay, you know what? Stuffing's pretty underrated, I'd say. Yeah, for me. So you've turned me a little bit. I will have to say that if there is ham, that's my choice. If there's like honey baked ham at the dinner table, that is usually my first choice for favorite dish. But I'm just gonna have to go with a classic. Lucas's famous rosemary crockpot mashed potatoes is my favorite dish. A little bit.
Oh, it's one
self-plug
you
there.
make?
Yeah, I'm making that one this year for the family,
Oh.
and people are excited.
I guess someone's got to be your own biggest fan, right?
That's right.
No, man, I'm
That's right.
good with that. My mom always said, everyone needs a fan, even if you're the fan. So,
That's so encouraging of your mom, for sure. I'm excited because Thanksgiving is obviously a really great time for food and hanging out with the family. Hopefully, a lot of people out there are having a little bit of a different Thanksgiving than last year. I know many people didn't get to see their families
yeah,
just
hopefully
because.
more able to get together safely this year, I think. So,
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, many people out there are vaccinated, including their family members, and are able to kind of come together and definitely celebrate Thanksgiving. Get the feast out of the way, and then maybe play some games with the family. Maybe play some
some
Mario
games.
Kart. Play
Maybe,
some.
maybe Lucas, they'll play some
God,
interactive storytelling games. Maybe Lucas, they'll
please.
play the number one. That's right, Lucas. Today, we are talking about the number one bad parent simulator, Heavy Rain. Dun, dun, dun.
That's right. The 2019, or I'm sorry, not 2019. The 2010 interactive fiction game, written and directed by David Cage, who turns out is a very controversial figure, very divisive. 9 out of 10 from IGN, 9 out of 10 on Eurogamer, 8.5 on GameSpot, 87 out of 100 on Metacritic.
You said
the
IGN gave them a
PS3 version.
9.
IGN gave them a 9.
I do think it is acknowledging that upon revisiting the game, because they re-reviewed it for the remaster, they gave it a 7.5.
Okay.
Maybe we'll go into more about what Lucas and I think it should be at as the evening continues. But before we go any further, everyone, a few things. I'm thankful for you, the audience, the people. And that's why I want feedback. I want to hear what you people think. I want to hear from you what you want to see on this podcast. You want to see Lucas and I live in a studio? Maybe we'll make that happen. I don't know. Shoot us an email, everyone. Thanks for playing pod at gmail.com. Maybe leave a review on, I don't know, Apple Podcast. Leave a review and tell Lucas and I what Thanksgiving dish we would be.
I like that one.
While I may I'm a stuffing guy, but I got a hankering. It came down to it. I'd be yams, sweet potatoes. Not sure about Lucas. I think he's just the turkey. He's a whole. He's a whole. He's a
I'm the main event.
Main
Yeah,
event. Follow us on Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're on all of it. Come hang out on Instagram, Twitter with us. TFP Podcast. That's TFP Podcast with an S at the end. And check out our website. We have a website. We don't do enough with that website. We should do more with that website. We had a photo shoot for the website. We haven't even put the damn pictures on.
I know. Well, our photos are on the
Instagram.
website, so
Maybe that'll be our Thanksgiving post. Just the one of you and me looking all suave, just like thankful.
totally
For us.
thankful for us. Yeah, yeah. And join the Discord too.
Join the
We gotta plug
Discord. You can find it on the link tree in either of our social media handles on Instagram or Twitter. And we're on TikTok, or you can find it on our website, thanksforplaying.live, or shoot us an email. We'll send you the invite that way. Either way, come hang out. It's a good time. We'd love to have you there. And yeah. All right, everyone. So before we go any farther, I'm going to give you all a brief rundown of Heavy Rain. It's a pretty intense story. So listen tight, buckle up. This will be lightly touching on spoilers. Well, as always, Lucas and I will try and keep the podcast as spoiler light as we can. But again, as always, with spoilers will inevitably come up, probably some major ones for this game, I imagine. So be prepared. Listen at your own caution. And Andrew Roberts in the chat, what up, my friend? Heavy Rain, first game I played on PS4. What a wild ride. It was a wild ride indeed. We will dive into that. But all right, everyone, Heavy Rain. So, Heavy Rain opens following the picture-perfect life of Ethan and his family on their son Jason's birthday. After a lovely morning, things unfold on a family trip to the mall and quickly go to shit. Jason wanders off, gets hit by a car. Meanwhile, Ethan walks away with depression and a coma from trying to shield Jason from the car that ended his life. As well, Ethan wins Worst Parent of the Year award. Fast forward 2 years, and Ethan has awoken from his coma of 6 months and is separated from his wife. Ethan is now at the park with his son Sean, only for Ethan to then black out and for Sean to be kidnapped by none other than the Origami Killer. origami.
Okay,
It
yeah,
really
hang on.
depends. Yeah, that was
So
that was
you're just like,
intentional.
yeah, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
No one knows how to
Um,
pronounce origami in
no
this
one knows
game,
how to
just by
pronounce
the way.
origami. Sean is kidnapped by none other than the origami killer with a penchant. A killer with a penchant for drowning his own victims in rainwater and targeting children exclusively. The story then introduces Jaden Norman, an FBI detective on the case, Madison Page, an insomniac journalist who knows nothing about romance, and Scott Shelby, a private detective working on the origami killer's case. The player plays as the rotating cast of characters of Ethan and the others and watches them struggle to find and save Sean and to discover the identity of the origami killer.
The origami killer.
The
Yeah.
origami, as you may have noticed, that was kind of all over the place, that synopsis. And I think that's a fair descriptor of this game, is little all over the place. I want to dive a little bit into David Cage. He has his own studio. They're the ones that developed this game, Quantic Dreams.
Quantic Dream.
Of course, it was published by Sony Entertainment themselves, but some other notable games David Cage has done. He's really defined a very clear niche for himself. Very much knows what he likes to make. Very much narrative-driven, story-based games. Interactive stories is how they call it. However, I think it a little bit here. I'm going to debate how interactive stories should be defined, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But
Ooh, I like that.
some other notable games our friend David Cage has done include Omicron, the Nomad Soul, and more notably, he's worked on Fahrenheit, also known in North America as Indigo Prophecy, Beyond Two Souls, and Detroit Become Human. I've played all of these games except Omicron, which is pretty different from the other ones, I believe. I've played Fahrenheit, I've played Beyond, and I've played Detroit Become Human. So I'm somewhat of a David Cage savant, you might say, or an expert even.
You're a fan.
I'm a fan. And I'm questioning where that fandom started. um, but yeah, he has a very clear genre he likes, being story-driven games where you get to build your own choices out and do your own thing. Very similar to another game we did for the podcast very recently, actually.
Until Dawn.
Until Dawn. So, Lucas, David Cage, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, are we just gonna go straight into it?
Yeah, I mean, unless you have anything else you'd like to preface with, but
No. I mean, to me, with Heavy Rain, okay, like when it comes to quote like story-driven games, I think story-driven game is like a pretty loaded term. Just in general, many RPG games are very heavy on the story side.
yes,
And
yes.
most Final Fantasies have a really great storyline, and it's weird to say that something's a story-based game when like Final Fantasy VII is not a story-based game despite having a phenomenal story, right? So story-based game, a little bit of a loaded term. I think that David Cage likes to think that he's telling stories better with his games than something like a Square Enix might tell a story with like a Final Fantasy VII, or I I don't know, like a Suda 51 might tell like a Killer 7 story or something like that. I think that um, David Cage really thinks that he's like taking a film context and turning it into a very effective video game and kind of repurposing one medium for another medium. But after playing Heavy Rain, I don't really feel that way. Again, I can't speak for David Cage. I know, Matt, you pulled a few quotes, and you're probably a little bit more well researched on the guy than me. I do have a few quotes that I did question. I did read an interview on David Cage. I'm not quite sure where his head's at when he's making something like this, but I don't know, man. This story, it's a story driven. It's basically a game that doesn't have any mechanics. Just for those of you that have never played it, doesn't have any like real game mechanics. Doesn't have any scores to keep. Doesn't have any sort of meta systems that drive anything.
At its
Permadeath
core,
is
it's
a
basically
thing.
the same as how like Until Dawn was, where the gameplay is just quick time events after quick time event after quick time event, and you're making
which
choices in between.
which impact the results of the story and create
Yes.
butterfly effects for certain things that play out in that story. And I typically don't like games like that in general, but I did like Until Dawn. I think that was a fun experience. I think it like leaned into a lot of things, did a lot of things right. It's crazy that to play Until Dawn and then play Heavy Rain to see how Until Dawn does a lot of things right 5 years later with the same genre of video game, and how Heavy Rain does a lot of things wrong. Even though Heavy Rain's a more highly rated game, I think it's just a context of its time, and its generation. But we'll get into that.
Yeah, I get major Joseph Farrett vibes, Farif
Right,
vibes from
Joseph
this guy.
Ross. Yeah,
Frost, excuse me. Joseph Frost vibes from this guy. Not in the sense that he's like as zany or wacky as Joseph Frost is, because actually, from what I can tell, at least in the interviews I saw, he does seem relatively chill and down to earth. So I'm not gonna throw that on him, but I can just tell. I think he just thinks he's a little smarter than he is, and is a little more clever than he probably is. And I don't know. It's interesting because the way he defines his games is as like interactive storytelling, right? And when I first heard that, I didn't really like that because in my mind, just because you're making choices and like, for me, I view all games as interactive storytelling.
right.
Because you're literally, I mean, I feel like by definition, you're literally, you're interacting with
Interacting with something
story.
that has a story. Yeah.
And I mean, games are the most clear medium where you do that. However, upon looking at the definition of interactive storytelling, it is more about like very specifically um, games like this, like Until Dawn, or like Oxenfree, even where the storyline's not linear, it's not predetermined, right? Where you're very actively um, engaging in the story, right? Where you're creating those changes. But to me, I view interactive storytelling, and maybe at this point it's just nitpicking words, but I don't. It's interesting that he calls it interactive storytelling because I feel like he makes so many little choices in the game and like gameplay mechanic wise, um, and as far as the tasks that he makes you do. And I'm not talking about like the tasks or the trials your character has to go through in the game. I'm talking about the minute details of frying up an egg for someone, or opening a
Dude.
door,
Oh
or
my god.
navigating an extremely awkward, not earned, story wise, romantic wise sex scene. Um,
Yeah.
that, including things like that for the sake of storytelling, makes very for the sake of your genre of interactive storytelling, and for the sake of all these random little quick time events, doesn't really work, and it just creates a game that is just awkward, I think.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
it's weird. And it's crazy, Lucas. I know I mentioned this to you already, but um I I had great memories of playing this game, actually.
Yeah. This is your
And
second playthrough, right?
this is my second playthrough, and I was actually very excited to jump back into this. And upon replaying it, I was just kind of blown away. I was just like, this game is not how I remember it, simply put. And it's interesting because, like I said, I've played a lot of other David Cage's games. I've played Detroit, his most recent, Detroit Become Human, which again I have great memories of, and very recent, like 2019. So I'd be very curious to replay that and see how I feel. But I played Beyond Two Souls. I remember that being like just okay. Indigo Prophecy was bad. I do remember that. So maybe he did
Okay.
improve over time, but we can get into it a bit more. But Lucas, and one other thing actually I do want to mention, sorry, is I hate that this game is praised as a storytelling benchmark when you look at the story, and
Oh
even not just
man.
from. I mean, there's so many things to pick apart simply just from, for one, how people talk to each other, how humans in this game interact with each other. It's not human like at all. Um, to just like very kind of clear motivational plot holes of characters and things like that. But I'm blown. You said this game won like a storytelling award. Is that
Yeah,
right?
it won the year it came out. It won 3 BAFTA awards, including best story of that
And
year. So
that's so
the 17th.
upsetting because, I mean, Red Dead Redemption came out that year. I
Yeah,
put that story above this game by far.
BioShock
I've played
2,
both. Bioshock. I haven't played Bioshock 2, but I mean, so many great. 20. This was 2010, right?
2010.
Very good year for games. The notable ones: Red Dead Redemption, Fallout New Vegas, Alan Wake, Mass
Yeah.
Effect, which I'm sure probably should have won an award. I haven't played it, but I've only heard amazing things about it. Limbo. So many amazing
It's
games came out
I,
during that time.
I just cannot believe that the blatant, not only were the blatant plot holes of the narrative ignored for that award, but even for the things that were not plot holes, I don't think they worked out very well. I mean, when it comes to story with games, just a few months ago we played a little game called Disco Elysium, one of the best stories, period, video game or not, that I've personally experienced. You know, massive, thousands and thousands and thousands of pages long, fully voice acted, just like Heavy Rain. Like, what? How are we as a gaming community setting the bar when it comes to story? Even before Heavy Rain came out, you know, if you want to compare like games that were, you know, a little more quote primitive than something like a Heavy Rain, like I said, you have like Final Fantasy VII, you have like complex storytelling going on in like any other like visual novel stuff, like even Phoenix Wright, even like I mean Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, like there's so many RPGs that were telling phenomenal stories with a lot of depth, with character development, no voice acting, but like I don't know, it's weird that this became like such a standard for storytelling when to me, if you took this story and plopped it again, like there's a lot of interaction and there's like a lot of different places that the story goes and different results. If you
Let's
just
pretend you
plop
plopped
this
every main choice, most popular choices. Yeah,
into like a game or sorry, into like a TV show or a movie, it wouldn't it
it'd be
would feel
awful.
like kind of a Law and Order episode, maybe. I mean, it has too many plot holes to even be that. To me, it just was not the caliber of story that I was really looking for a game that's supposed to be all completely story based and all about story. But beyond that, the interactive drama thing, and sorry, Andrew, I'm reading your
Andrew,
I'm reading your
Andrew had
chat.
a very
I'll get
funny comment. My mom walked in when I was playing this game, and it was hard to explain the point of it.
okay, okay. I'll respond to that in a minute. I just, in terms of the story, it's one thing to say or categorize a game as like an interactive drama or a heavy story based game, but when the interaction, I'll point out a very specific example. There is a point in the game where you bust into a mansion, you kill 20 dudes with 20 bullets, and the only piece of interaction is me clicking one button on my keyboard to kill those guys. Okay, so guy pops up, I push W, kill him. Guy pops up, push W, kill him. I do that 20, I swear, 20 times in that scene. At what point is this an interactive scene where I'm making decisions, or is this just a freaking cutscene? It's like, it's a movie with extra steps. It's a scene from a TV show with like me mindlessly pushing a button. That's not fun. That's not really interactive. It's like it doesn't even create any sort of extra choice I could make. I like there's some scenes in this game, some chapters where if you completely failed a quick time event, it doesn't matter. If you say no to X, you still get Y. There's some choices that mean literally nothing in this game, so I don't understand how we can call it like something that you actually have control over, except for the points where you can possibly die, which are based on you pushing a button at the right time, not
Yeah,
based on
and
choices.
I think some previous listeners of the podcast, particularly people that listen to Until Dawn, might think we're being hard on this kind of game so far. But I mean, I think something too important to acknowledge with Until Dawn was a lot of the mechanics in that game that decided whether you died or not were, yeah, it did have a lot of kind of bullshit quick time events like we're describing here. However, it also had a lot of um, actual like actions you were participating in. Like there were multiple points where I had to actually use my controller and aim my gun at like one of the I don't even
Yeah,
remember what they're
drama.
called.
Yeah, real like
Yeah,
tense. I'm gonna die unless I
yeah,
aim and shoot this guy,
yeah.
which this game
Or
had done.
like a very cool thing where they took advantage of the motion of the controller, where you have to literally sit still with the controller. Then if you move too much, you get caught by the demon things. I forget what they're called, dingoes or whatever.
Wendigos. And
Wendigos,
how
yeah.
about this? In Until Dawn, at least leading up into the points where characters could die, you made choices on, you know, is this character gonna walk off with this character? Is this character gonna sit here and potentially not be at risk to get killed? Like Heavy Rain doesn't even set up certain scenarios to lead to a possibility of getting killed or not getting killed. You just are forced into a funnel where you go do the thing that you have to do now your QuickTime inputs, and if you fuck up your QuickTime inputs, you can die. That's what the game is. It's
Yeah.
and on top of that, it's like for some reason you just fight a guy like every other scene. I don't understand like why we keep having to fight people for no reason.
Yeah, it wasn't great. First impressions overall, though, Lucas. I mean, before you realized how you really felt, how did you feel?
So this game to me, I'll just give a short history of the context with the game here is I did have like friends that played this game that had PS3s. I did not have a PS3 in high school. And I think I had a lot of friends that played this game and really enjoyed it. I had friends that like came to me in school were like, "Oh, I'm playing through this really cool game called Heavy Rain," and it's always just kind of been on the back burner for me. And I mean, as I played it, I was kind of reluctant to dive in just because we had just recently done a similar game in my head, which was Until Dawn. And then as I played more Heavy Rain, it just kind of dawned on me that a lot of things weren't really making that much sense. And I wasn't that blown away with the interactivity levels of the game. I thought that a lot of them were very arbitrary. Um, a
Pretty
lot of them,
rudimentary.
a lot of them were very rudimentary. I mean, there's just this part where you like put out plates for the dinner table for the kid's birthday party, and you're putting out the plates, and you have to do
Also,
the input
the
for every plate.
the plates are in the fucking living room.
Yeah, I know that was
Zero
weird.
sense.
I don't know why. I don't know what David Cage was thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'd ever been in a house before or whatever, but I don't know who puts the nice plates in the living room. It's but when you put the plates down on the table, you do a separate input for every single plate. It's just a forced way to make you do something during what would otherwise be a cutscene. So when I
Yeah.
started kind of realizing that this is what the game was going to do to me, which was just like every little interaction, no matter how small, you were going to have to do an input for, I was kind of like slowly backing out of that. That's kind of where my initial thoughts on the game lied. And then as the story unfolded, I think in the last like half of the game, it started kind of falling apart narratively. And then when the reveal of who the Origami Killer is finally shown, I like my jaw dropped at how lame that was, and I kind of just was upset and really checked out on the game.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I don't know. I'll tell you my first impression. Jason.
God,
Jason.
yeah.
For those that don't know, when you first lose your son Jason in the mall, your main action you can do is just walk around screaming Jason, and I don't know, it doesn't even really sound like a concerned dad at that point. He's like literally some of the way he screams is just like Jason. Like it, I don't know, very very odd voice acting and direction choices.
And very like out of like not the way you would sound, I think. Just completely out of,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
the emotional like level very out of place for me.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of had a general idea of what this game was about already. I'd played it years ago, and I will say that I was actually a bit surprised in the beginning. I did not remember how bad of a parent Ethan was. I did not remember. I thought Jason got kidnapped in that scenario. I totally forgot he died, and Sean was actually the one that got kidnapped. Totally forgot about that. And yeah, it was just I was also very blown away in the beginning by the monotony of the tasks you have to do. And there was literally almost a point where I was like, am I going to have to look up a guide to find the fucking plates? Like, I was like, I'm in the kitchen. Where's the plates? Like, where else would they be? And then after like 10 minutes of me wandering around like an idiot, she's like, my wife just goes, "Oh, come on, Jason. They're in the living room where they always are."
yeah.
Or Ethan, I'm like, "What? Like, no, that's why'd you why'd you take me 10 minutes to tell me that?" And yeah, it's just a weird game. It's a dark game and a bummer game too. I mean, your kid. Well, we're kind of poking fun at how shitty of a dad Jason is, or Ethan is, excuse me, but also it's very sad. Jason dies very early on. His kid after that, Sean, is very clearly like also depressed and not
Traumatized,
connected
really.
to his father anymore and traumatized. Ethan is beyond fucked mentally, having like blackouts and having to go to therapy and
Which-
depression.
He doesn't have any blackouts after his son gets kidnapped, by the way.
Yeah, conveniently.
I just want to point that out.
God, I forgot about that.
And God, I'm just going so in. And the asthma from Scott just goes away. Just doesn't.
Yeah, it's not even a plot point. It's just there for no reason, actually. And his wife, Ethan's wife, is just holds nothing back. Completely blames everything on him. So it's just like, damn, the first hour and a half of this game is it's rough. It's
Totally.
hard. And I don't really have a great place to put this in. It kind of fits into game design, kind of doesn't. So I'm just going to talk about it. But David Cage is an alien, I think.
That's your take.
I think David Cage is an alien. I think he watched like a couple episodes of Law and Order, maybe watched a sitcom, maybe watched a season of Friends, season 6 maybe, and maybe watched a couple soap operas. And I think he watched all those, and I think he thought he figured out how humans are and how humans act from that media, and he decided, I'm gonna make a video game, and that's how we got Heavy Rain. That's how we got Indigo Prophecy and the other games.
Seriously.
I think he improved a little bit by Detroit Become Human because I do still have positive memories of that. Gonna have to replay that one soon. But yeah, I mean, the way people interact together in this game are not how people interact at all. It's like a very badly written script being performed by very bad actors that don't know how to act natural. And to be fair, acting's hard, but I mean, shoot, when these people are getting paid for it, I expect to, like, come on, you know? And it's also voice acting more so as well. And to be fair, it's the direction they're given, but I mean, the voice acting, like, doesn't work with any of it. It's just, it's rough, and these people are interacting as if they're, it's just not how humans interact, and they have these romances in the story that aren't earned at all. I mean, one of the main romances is between Ethan and one of the characters you mentioned earlier, Madison. And the romance makes zero sense. The only reason Madison tries to get close to him in the beginning is because she's an investigative journalist. However, even with that, like going off the interactions, which are there for all their interactions, none of it is anything remotely that would build any sort of romance. I mean, it's literally her seeing this guy bleeding at a really weird, shady ass, creepy motel, and then just being like, oh, all of a sudden going savior mode. Just being like, oh, let me help you, let me heal you, just some random guy. And then even when she finds out this guy is probably at that point in the story, probably the suspected origami killer, looks like he's the origami killer. She's just like, oh, so hot. And then he like reciprocates, and they fall in love, and there's like a really awkward sex scene that doesn't feel earned.
Oh my god, that sex scene is so bad.
To be fair, you have to choose to engage in the sex scene. You don't have to kiss Madison at that point, but I guarantee you every teenager playing this game chose that decision. So it is just a very, very odd romance that doesn't make any sense. There's a very weird romance between Scott and one of the victim's mothers, which is also very problematic due to Scott's nature. Lauren, and yeah, and then it just, none of it makes sense. The way people talk to each other don't make sense, and it's just bad.
I know, for just to recontextualize here for the audience, I know we're just going in on the story. The story is the game.
Yeah.
There is no in this podcast we do game design, art style, sound design, game design, art style, sound design, all that stuff. But this game is the story. There is not really any real game design in it.
Yeah,
Less so than some other interactive drama games, like Until Dawn had systems in place, had like objects you can find, had extra stuff, had like a higher degree of interactivity in real game design, exploration even, one might say.
And
this game doesn't have any of that. This actually is a very linear movie, TV show plot disguised as a video game is the only way I would describe it.
Yeah, and I mean, just going back a little bit too, I think I'd go as far as to say I find it problematic the way he depicts women in this.
Dude, Madison is literally a sex object in this game.
Yeah, like, completely. It's terrible, and
she's introduced late. The first time she's introduced, she's half naked in her apartment, sleeping on her couch. Every other time after that, she's introduced the first scene half naked in her apartment, and then she takes a shower, and she's naked in that shower scene, and then gets attacked by people in her own apartment in her own house. It's like a total rape fantasy thing going on. The very first chapter with this girl. And then she leaves and goes to a motel, and then like she's all of a sudden like the nurse for the main male character. She's literally just supposed to be like this kind of female savior
She had
nurse
pretty much
thing.
no reason to be in the story.
Yeah, exactly. She didn't have a
And
reason. And oh
she does
man,
all these things for Ethan too, like goes on all these crazy investigative trips, and there's no reason anyone remotely in their right mind would ever help out a person like this and risk their own life after they've known them for like less than a day. And
exactly.
it, I'd I'd be less upset if I hadn't played any other of his games, but I remember I don't know if it was as egregious as it is in this game, but there's a very similar romance in Indigo Prophecy between two of the main characters that's just very same thing. I think at least the way I remember it in that game, I will say at least I remember the girl character having a much more prominent role, not just being kind of a sex object per se, but I just remember like at the end of it, the two characters, spoilers for Indigo Prophecy, the two characters get together and they're like, "Oh my god, I love you too," and just like again, there's like a sex scene, and I just remember, and I'm like in college, and I just remember I'm playing this game, and I'm just like, what,
Why is there a sex scene right here?
like from no matter how you look at it from a story sense, because I remember watching it or playing it, and I'm just thinking like that makes zero sense given like anything that's happened. There's no reason for these two to remotely like each other,
Yeah,
but apparently they're in love. And I don't know. I mean, maybe gamers, maybe we're not as complicated as we think we are, but I'd like to think most of us would be able to see past that and acknowledge that as bad writing and, again, debatably problematic writing. And more so, I mean, shame on the publications that like gave this game good reviews, honestly,
and didn't
because you're just
point that kind of thing
encouraging.
out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure in some of the reviews I read from or listened to from IGN, like some of the praises were the complicated characters and the depth of them.
Yeah, I
And
was
like
even
what
seeing.
depth again, and it's not I know we're shitting on Madison to be fair. Like what depth does Norman have? What depth does even Ethan have, honestly, beyond like the surface level of like his trauma? Like there's no intricacies to him.
Yeah,
There's no
totally.
intricacies to Scott other than spoiler alert, he's a really weird fucking psychopath with very poor motivations for committing murders. It just make none of it works.
The I saw like that Madison was considered to be like a strong female lead character in like at the time that was like what reviews would say.
Fuck that.
Which
You want a
is
strong
really
female lead? Play Control.
yeah, there you go. Exactly. It's really problematic to say that Madison Page in Heavy Rain is a good example of a strong female lead when the things that are emphasized about her in this game are her body for one and her sex appeal in order to get information on the male characters in the game. There's literally a scene where you go into the bathroom and quote like make her sexier by applying like
Not our
eyeliner.
words, literally hers. I
Yeah,
think her
it
exact words are gotta like sexy up or
I
something.
gotta
Very
get
again, very
sexy.
bad
Yeah,
writing. Yeah.
and then you literally you do this whole interaction. You do the input to rip her skirt in half, and make it shorter, and then you do the interaction to apply eyeliner to the right eye, and then you do the interaction to apply eyeliner to the left eye. Both two separate inputs. I don't know why we're forced to do these things. It's like I don't want to do this. And then the next interaction you have is you go up on a table and you do all the inputs to dance quote sexy in front of the nightclub owner so that he'll take you up to his office and then you can get information out of him. It's like so it's such heavy objectification of her. It's like you are I don't know
I mean, they do
why
that. They
we
do that
do
with
that.
Lauren too in the mansion party, where
That's yeah.
she acts like drunk and is like flirting with the guards, like dancing on them, just to distract them. Like there's no other way. Like what would have been cool is okay, how can I scheme to get these party goers in a fight to distract the guards so that I can go up to the room, right?
There
That
was
would have
actually a
been
different.
interesting.
I did a different thing for that one.
Oh,
I
was
made a
that an
guy fight
option?
I made a guy fight another guy.
All
I
right.
mean,
Well, hey,
okay,
maybe I should
cool.
write these games.
No. So, okay, that is not choice, in my opinion. That is not a real interactive thing for an interactive drama because there's no difference of results. There's a difference of means, and all you're doing is either making your female part. See, I didn't even know that. So the choice A is make your female partner flirt with the guards in order to distract them, or choice B, get a drunk guy to fight another guy so you can make a diversion and sneak past the guards. There's still the same result. What's the point of having an interactive
Yeah,
story.
there's a I forget what it's. There's a name for that in storytelling, like that kind of choice, that kind of interactive quote unquote storytelling where it's just like it branches, but then the branches return. So it's like they're a straight line going up, and they branch off a little bit with two different choices, and then they come right back.
There were so many of those in this game.
Yeah.
It was crazy. There was
Um,
one.
Go listen to our Anything's Possible in Agency and Gaming.
Yeah,
We talk
yeah,
about
yeah.
this a lot.
That was a solid one. There was a choice I had to make when I was in the evil doctor, freaking doctor torture guy. I was in his house, and he's like, "Would you like something to drink?" And I specifically said no. I was like, "No, I'm cool. This guy's probably gonna poison me." And then he's like, "No, that won't do. I'll make you a drink." And you end up with a drink. It's like, what? I literally said no. It's like this game is not even allowing, it's so blatantly not allowing me to make a choice.
You can still
That-
not drink it though.
No, I know, but what was the point of choice A or like, you might as well not. He basically had an actor record another voice line, created a whole nother animation for him to deliver that line in order to get the same result that it didn't even matter. Like, if you're going to write the script, just have the old man hand you a drink without even having you make a choice, because it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Like, the choice ultimately doesn't matter for the gamer. It created like more work and more development, albeit it was a small amount, to do that sort of thing. Why do it? Oh my God, I'm
Yeah.
getting heated over here. I'm glad you feel the same way about this game as me. And I'm sorry for all the Heavy Rain fans out there,
Yeah.
but
And honestly,
Man.
as well too, the game was just really glitchy.
yeah, it
Um,
was. I don't know if it was the version I played or what, but
I played
it
on
was-
the technically the remastered PS4 version, but I mean, I had and again, this is the remastered version, so it's been worked on since then, and they definitely had another opportunity to QA it. And there's still many, but I mean, there were like 3 or 4 times where I would leave a cutscene where I'm like talking to someone, and then as I re-enter, I guess the overworld where I can like walk around properly, my controller was working for all intents and purposes, and the game hadn't froze, but it wasn't accepting my inputs anymore, and I was just
Ugh.
stuck, and I'd have to reload it. Or I had a really stupid one. This happened a couple times where, like when I made the eggs for Lauren in Scott's apartment, Scott Shelby the detective, it just like didn't register that I did it, and it just like let me do it again. I was like, oh, do I need
Wow.
more? So, but I was like, nope, put him in the exact same spot. It was like I never did it in the first place. So, I had a bunch of little things like that, and I was just kind of like, I'm not enjoying this.
I have a quote from Edge, actually, a review that came out at the time. They were one of the only unfavorable reviews for Heavy Rain in 2010. And this was written by the Edge staff. I was looking for a staff writer name, but this review was just attributed to the staff over at Edge. Quote, Heavy Rain is a point-and-click adventure with a massive verb sheet.
Verb sheet.
Yeah. Just like it's a point and click with just extra steps is the way
Oh,
I take
yeah.
it. Hard agree on that one. I don't think we're technically still on game design, I guess, but the choices and limits placed upon you basically made the game entirely linear, and the only differences in results happened when you failed quick reaction based events, which to me is not real choice. Real choice would be I go to location A or I go to location B and complete actions C, D, E, F, whatever. Like, the thing is that you're always going to end up going to the same places in the same order, no matter. I mean, granted, until the end when things get a little fuzzy narratively. Basically, you play the whole game doing everything exactly what David Cage wanted you to do. There's no breaking sequences. There's no doing things out of order. There's like no agency in this game except for failing very quick reaction, quick time events, which will lead to different results at the very end of the game. Quite literally, like the last 5 minutes of the game, where like you get the epilogues for different characters. That's all it is. This is barely passable for game design. There's hardly any design in there. It's just a script that you play through, and it's not even a good script. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
We got to move on to the other sections. I
do.
know we're kind of touching on every section at once, but Yeah, we can move on.
I mean, yeah, that was game design. Art style. It's 2010. It's fine.
Okay, I do have something though, and this is not necessarily this is not an indictment on the art team or anything, but I just think that there's a very clear like intention to change the look of the game from the very first introduction sequence to the later part of the game. So it's like you play the first part of the game, it's all happy and the nice house, it's all sunny, it's all bright, and then your son dies, go into a coma. Now it's rainy, and it's just pure permanently
Everything's
rainy.
gray. It's dark.
Everything's gray, permanently drab. The thing is that if 10%, 5% of your game is bright and sunny and green, and 95% of your game is drab and rainy and urban, you just have a 95% monotone game with 5% of contrast to it. It's not real contrast. Like it's
No.
just it's just the beginning sets a like kind of level sets a little bit, and then we get that switch, and when it does switch to the moody rainy atmosphere, it's like, oh dang, okay, let's go, like this is the world we're entering it. And then the whole game is that way. There's no other way to recontextualize yourself artistically where you're just like, oh, this is just now the look of the game. And almost it's just not the right level balance of like contrast for me in terms of the art style, because I know what they're trying to accomplish, but it starts fading away very quickly after you're just in the rain for what feels like 10 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
That
It's not. I mean, yeah, and it's like you said, when you open with that, and then it just puts you in that. There's no way to get out of that like dreary mode. It's not a stylistic choice; it just is, right?
your game is just a jury. Yeah, there's no contrast there.
Yeah, and I mean graphically, I think it probably looks fine for 2010, but it's not great now, obviously by today's standards. But
Can't fault it for that, but
can't fault it. I think
it is
it.
what it is.
Honestly, I'm pretty sure at the time graphically it was very very well renowned. So I'll give it that much, I guess. Did I have anything else I want to touch on art now? Sound design. I the voice acting. I mean, it was terrible. I think you can detail a little bit more. However, I did actually like the soundtrack. I thought it was kind of like a fun LA noir vibe almost that I enjoyed personally quite a bit. Um, I liked it a lot, and I got a cool quote, or not a quote, but a fun fact. It was composed by Norman Corbelli, and he was specifically instructed to represent the character's point of views via music.
I saw
So
that.
he specifically had a piano for Ethan, chamber orchestra for Madison, a symphony for Norman, and then a brass and flute band for Scott Shelby. So I enjoyed all that personally, and I think a lot of people would as well. And they recorded at Abbey Road Studios.
That's cool.
So shout out Beatles.
Cool. All right. Um, Sound design, I guess I'll just give my 2 cents here. Yeah, I agree with you. Voice acting was pretty bad, except for a few key performances by some people. I think Ethan did have a few moments where he shined through during the trials, specifically when he cuts off his own finger. I was like, in that trial, I actually thought his vocal performance was like, oh shit, okay, that was cool. It was a very simple trial. It was super straightforward. Um, to me, that was like a point in the narrative that felt a little bit better than all the other parts of the narrative. I mean, it just felt like a little more like, okay, hey, are you willing to cut your own finger off? He's like, "Grr," and then he like finally goes through with it and does it. It's like, okay, and then he screams. It's like, okay, cool, straightforward, simple. Like, okay, makes everything makes sense. It's like took a small bite and chewed it very well. That's how that felt.
Yeah.
Every other piece of voice acting, especially from the kids, oh my god, Uh, they're so bad. There's even this part with, and I know I was telling you about this earlier. One of the child actor for the voice of Child Scotty in the flashback of the two kids playing in the construction yard. One of those kids is French, and his accent is very clearly like a kid trying to mask his French accent. And if you go back and listen to it, it's very, very obvious because something did feel off the whole time. And I just there's no excuse. There's just like literally no excuse to do that. It's like there's a kid, supposed to be a kid in Philadelphia, American kid, and you're using a kid with a French accent for that character. It's like mind blowing. I don't know why that
Yeah,
is.
and I do want to mention though, actually, I didn't mind Scott's adult actor, voice actor.
Me
They
neither.
they sounded exactly like how I'd imagine like a very stereotypical private detective would sound. And there's literally one line too where I think it's when he's with Lauren trying to help her baby out and trying to feed it, and Lauren's like, "Are you sure you can handle it?" And Scott's just like, "Come on, I'm a private detective. There ain't nothing I can't do." And I'm just like, "Yes, Scotty, yes, you are a private detective." So yeah, I thought his voice acting was decent, but everyone else was pretty bad. Lauren was pretty bad. Even the minor characters were like noticeable enough for me to consider it bad. Freaking like Gordy, I think, is like the rich dad's
Oh yeah,
son's.
Gordy Kramer.
He was really bad. Um, yeah, it wasn't great. Norman was terrible. I'm not sure who his voice actor was, but he also just didn't sound human
It
sometimes to
was
me.
like he was trying to do some sort of like no decent accent thing, and it just wasn't. It was like going in and out, and
Yeah,
it just wasn't really working. I don't know
it was
what
like
was going on there.
it sounded like if I went up to you, it was like, "Hey, Lucas, want to hear my British accent?"
Yeah.
And like it would be there for like a half second, then it'd go right back out. That's what it
Yeah.
sounded
It
like.
just
Yeah,
I don't know what kind of direction he was getting or why it was performed that way, but yeah, that was not great.
not great at all. All right, NPC award. Did you have any? I do have
So,
one.
okay, I'm go ahead, go first, and I'll do mine second.
Mine was the creepy motel guy.
Okay, I'm gonna mention him, but go ahead.
I just thought one of the main points of the game where Madison meets Ethan is she arrives at this motel because apparently, as an insomniac, that's the only place she can sleep. And the guy that checks her in is just incredibly creepy and very weird, and does this very weird thing with his mouth, very reminiscent of what the doctor did in Until Dawn, where it's almost like a ventriloquist where he talks. And this is clearly like a design choice. You can tell because you don't. It's never as egregious at any point in the other points in the game where he's talking and then his mouth just kind of hangs, like
Yeah,
like
that was a great choice in
yeah.
Until Dawn, by the way.
It was
Still,
an amazing choice. And then like his words like intentionally won't match his lip flaps at certain points, but you can very again you can tell it's like a stylistic choice. And I don't know. I thought he was kind of fun. I was like, oh, this guy's really weird. I wonder what role he's gonna play. And then he had like zero role. Just kind of started to build him up for no reason, which I thought was a bummer. But
he was just a way for like us to ogle at Madison for the second that he sees her because he's just like a random creep, just like, oh
yeah,
hey, and then it's just like, oh okay, so she's a desirable female object. Cool, got it. Thank you
yeah.
for reassuring me, Mister Hotel Receptionist.
But-
Um, my NPC award is, and again, I'm picking one because I have to pick one. But I will use this opportunity as a platform to say that the NPCs in this game are like very much just cliches. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you were saying that like David Cage just kind of watched like some TV shows or soap operas and said, "Oh, this is how humans act," and then just said like, "Oh, like a sleazy motel receptionist. Like, of course he's gonna like ogle the woman, right? Like, let's just make him do that, right?" Or it's like, "Oh, of course this badass cop is gonna like jump to conclusions about Ethan being the origami killer," and they do. It's like these characters are
that was
just so
also another thing.
short-cutted.
Everyone they couldn't decide on how to say origami. It was either a cop or like someone with a really heavy like North, like New York or like Philadelphia, Boston accent. Be like, it's the origami killer. We got to
Yeah,
catch the origami killer.
it was so bad.
There,
It was so
or it
insane.
was origami killer. You know,
Yeah,
I got a kick out of how much Lieutenant Blake though emphasized origami.
he did. Um,
Yeah.
but the NPC I will choose, just because I have to, is going to be, I forget his name, Gordy Kramer's son. The
Oh,
one who we
really?
think is, yeah, I like him. because I actually think that they tried to do some weird psychological depth to him as like a legit crazy person. Like he felt crazier to me than any other quote crazy person in the game because he's like very clearly infantile and stunted because he's like watching a cartoon while two chicks are like making out next to him on a couch when you meet him. The cartoon on the screen is like morbid in a way because like chickens are getting their heads cut off in the kitchen. And like he's also like cheering on the bodyguards fighting Scott in that whole fighting sequence.
Yeah.
So I thought that with what they had, that character was actually insanely well developed. I wish they did something more with him, or maybe put a little bit more the same amount of care into the other characters, where they were like creepy or weird, but they also like were there was very clearly a psychological reason behind it, or an implied psychological reason for their insanity. But that was pretty much the only character that you felt that with, and he was such a
Yeah.
throwaway. He was in one scene; it didn't matter.
Because
So
even in those brief moments you meet him and his clear like nuances, of course he's like that, right? Because he is a spoiled brat probably his whole life, grew up as daddy's little boy, had everything he ever wanted. So of course, like if someone's gonna be crazy, that's how they're gonna turn up from those circumstances. So
yeah, they say all that without saying all that.
yeah.
That's what's cool. Yeah. All right, companion piece pick.
Companion piece pick. I have a companion piece. I am going with Seven by David Fincher movie.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
And for none other than the reason that it's a detective movie and it's actually good. It's a very good movie. I highly recommend you check it out. Very pretty dark as well, actually. Very dark. Very graphic as well, but very, very good movie. David Fincher is sick as hell. And
Yeah.
Brad
agree.
Pitt, can't go wrong.
Yeah. All right. Love it. Love the choice. All right. I I don't have a companion piece pick. Instead, I will also use this as a soapbox, if it's all right with you. I got something for you though. Something I think you would actually appreciate, and some of our literary-minded listeners might also agree with, or get a kick out of. For those of you that know, mystery as a genre, mystery as murder mysteries specifically, as a novel style, are fairly new in terms of like literature, right? They're really about 100+ years old, in kind of in the modern era of like crime and investigation and police, have the detective novel and the detective story really shine through and become one of the more popular genres in TV and film and all that stuff, right? And in the early part of the 20th century, there were a lot of writers writing, very well-known, very famous detective stories. Agatha Christie and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, kind of setting out a lot of framework for what makes a really great detective story or murder mystery. There's a very famous set of rules that is out. S.S. Van Dyne's article on the 20 rules for writing detective stories. I'm not going to read all 20 here, but I want to read some of these to you, Matt, and ask you if this game, as a mystery story, is breaking the rules here. Now, to be fair to Heavy Rain, it's weirdly not a mystery. It's more of like, because there is a dead body, there is a murder investigation,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more of a kidnapping story. It's slightly different. Which is why it's in this weird middle ground, I think, where the kid that shows up dead in the first scene where we meet Norman just gets forgotten about. I think we all just forgot about him, which is pretty great. There's like supposed to be an active murder investigation happening because a dead body shows up at the beginning of the game, but none of it matters because it just serves as a jumping off point to find the kidnapper of a kid, if that makes sense. It's a very weird narrative thing that gets completely overlooked. Anyway, rule number 1, Matt, S.S. Van Dyne's 20 rules for detective stories. The reader must have equal opportunity with the detective for solving the murder. All clues must be plainly stated and described. Does that happen here?
Repeat it.
The reader must have equal opportunity with the detective for solving the mystery. All clues must be plainly stated and described.
No.
Okay, next one. No willful tricks or deceptions may be played on the reader other than those legitimately played by the criminal on the detective himself.
No.
You're literally tricked as the audience in
Yeah.
Heavy Rain, might I say. Okay. Number 3, there must be no love interest in the story. To introduce amour is to clutter up a purely intellectual experience with irrelevant sentiment.
Mm, well, no.
Number 4, the detective himself or one of the official investigators must never turn out to be the culprit. This is bald trickery on par with offering someone a bright penny for a $5 gold piece. It's very old rules here. Um, the culprit must be determined by logical deductions, not by accident or coincidence or unmotivated confession. To solve a criminal problem in this fashion is like sending the reader down a deliberate wild goose chase, then telling them after they arrived that they have failed. I
Okay.
think I can go on. There's a lot of rules here, and I encourage the listeners out there to check it out. But as far as mysteries go, which at the core this game story is supposed to be, it fails on a lot. And again, these are quote rules to writing great mysteries. Breaking the rules is fine if you do them right. Blah blah blah. We all know the gist. But there's such blatant disregard for what a good mystery should turn out to be. The fact that the main investigator of the story turns out to be the culprit is so whack. And the fact that you don't really learn it through actions that you take, it kind of just gets revealed to you this really like heartless way. It's also, it actually gets revealed to you through flashback, which is just insanely heartless to me. Um, yeah, it as a mystery story full through it does not really hit to me. So that's the companion piece pick platform, and I'm gonna die on that soapbox.
I enjoyed that.
Thank you.
That was nice. Um, and we can kind of talk about that a little bit more nitpicks actually too. But favorite moments, not really many, but I have one.
Let's hear it.
When Jason got run over, because it surprised me. That's not what I remembered happening. I was like, oh, look at that. So that was my favorite moment. Not for
You
the
know
kid
what?
dying, to be clear. Not for the kid dying, but because I was like, oh no. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Okay. Love it. Love it. Favorite moment? I'm gonna go with the drug trips. Just multiple favorite moments. The drug trips by Norman. Thought those were pretty cool. I liked sort of the feeling of like the camera shaking. I like the visuals of it.
or you mean with
Um,
the withdrawals, rather, right?
sorry, yeah, the withdrawals, not the drug trips. Although he is kind of tripping, he's like hallucinating straight up at some points.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he's not necessarily having a drug withdrawal, but yeah, just kind of thought those are cool. They were like the perfect amount of time. They didn't last too long. You had a choice of whether to take drugs or not take drugs, so it actually felt like you were, making a choice.
You know what I wish
Uh,
though with that too is I really wish that kind of what you were saying earlier that they just fleshed out his character more. I would have loved to know the reason why was he addicted to these drugs, right? Is
I
there
know. I love how he's just addicted to drugs.
should we be rooting for him to get off these, or is he just some guy that randomly was like, oh, sick trypticane?
I
You
know.
know,
Is he like trying to get over what is trypticane? I forgot to look
they
this
don't
up.
really ever define what it does or like what it is, but it's just some addictive drug in that universe. But they never give us any reason to root for him or not root for him as far as the drug addiction goes because they never really speak. It's literally just there as a reason for David Cage to throw drugs into the story mix.
Totally.
It doesn't really serve any. I mean, I guess you can kind of say it serves some narrative purpose because there are certain points where it does affect how the story moves because he has like withdrawal at certain pivotal moments, but it's not an interesting involvement in the story by any means, and it's a waste opportunity because again, that could have maybe been an interesting character. Maybe he had some tragic backstory that is the reason he's addicted to those drugs. Maybe he never even intended to get addicted in the first place. There could be so many reasons for that. So I think that's a bit of another wasted opportunity. I want to move on to nitpicks here, Lucas, and we've talked a lot about, but one I really want to focus in on as well and one that you've really brought up to me as well too is, well, three big ones. One, again, spoilers, we already talked about it. Detective Scott Shelby, who you play as much of the game, is actually the killer, the origami killer. I want to talk about Scott's motivations and why it's awful. I want to talk about, and you brought this up to me, why the trials make zero sense. And three, the reveal of the killer and how it just outright tricks the audience and how shitty that is.
Yeah.
So I just want to dive into the motivation a little bit. So everyone, Scott's backstory is grew up and very terrible. Obviously, grew up in an abusive household with a very abusive, alcoholic father. Terrible stuff. Not trying to downplay that at all. And one day to get out of the house while his dad's having an alcoholic episode, him and his brother John, they go and they're playing around the construction site, which is where their trailer is, which is an odd spot for a trailer, regardless of the situation, I think, but whatever. And they're playing around, and then it's raining heavily that day, and John ends up getting stuck in a pipe that's raising with water due to the rain, and Scott has to go find help. No one's around, of course, so he goes to the dad. Dad is just pissed drunk, doesn't want to help, so unfortunately, John ultimately dies while holding Scott's hand, I believe. And somehow, this motivation, this event, while traumatic to be sure, it would be traumatic to anyone. This event leads Scott to, and maybe he did more when he was younger or in his earlier 20s and 30s, I don't know, but Scott looks like he's around the age of 50, maybe leaning into his 60s. This leads Scott to all of a sudden to decide at that age point to start murdering children by drowning them in rainwater. And by only giving the children the chance to live by making their fathers, which probably many of the fathers did attempt these challenges, do extremely, extremely hard challenges for no reason, such as driving into ongoing traffic, such as and surviving and navigating that successfully, such as navigating through electrical wires and crawling through glass,
cutting your finger off,
drinking poison. And the only one of these I can maybe slightly justify is the poison, which is also fake poison he makes you drink at the end. However, this motivations makes no sense, because did he have a shitty dad? Yes. Did his dad not care about his son? Yes. But put any other person in that situation, any bystander, any other father figure. If Scott was in that situation with either Sean or Jason, hands down, I guarantee you he goes and helps him out. Any of the fathers that's their kid, they probably go help them out, right? They're not like picking necessarily abusive people per se. So it's disappointing to see, because his trauma does not justify the motivations for those murders, no matter how you look at it. And even when he's confronted about it, Scott, when he's confronted by Ethan, Scott just goes, "You have no idea what it was like for me. I had it hard too." And that's like the end of like their moral battle, right? And again, I'm not doubting Scott had it hard after his brother died very tragically, but forcing dads to do insane challenges to try and to have the opportunity to maybe save their sons doesn't tie into trauma of you having a very shitty, abusive, alcoholic father.
It doesn't.
Not at all.
I agree. And also, it's like, the trials are life-risking trials, right? So the first trial is to drive into oncoming traffic. So you're saying that the origami killer believes that if you drive into oncoming traffic in order to save your son, then you're a good father, right? So you do that, almost die, and then you got to do the next trial. It's like, what? Like, that trial, if you die, means you can't do the other trials. So
yeah, the only one that is kind of justifiable is the poison one, because it's the ultimate sacrifice to save your son, but you don't actually die. Like, that's the only one that's slightly justifiable.
The cutting the finger one off makes sense to me too, though, because it's a self-harm. It's like, are you willing to go through the pain of doing it to save your son? That makes sense to me, like, as far as the context of it all. But if the first trial is driving through oncoming traffic and you die, then your kid's just going to die too. So they imply that there was like a husband that got a shoebox and then left. This is actually Lauren's husband. Got the shoebox, left, and never came back again. So he died, right? Trying to do these trials. Well, then the son died because the dad died. It's like it makes no logical sense for the motivation of the killer. Like, oh, let me see how willing this dad is to save his son. Oh, he drove into oncoming traffic, died. Okay, well then the son's gonna die. Fucking
Yeah.
idiot. Like,
It's not even that his dad wasn't willing. His dad was just pissed drunk and an asshole. It's
yeah,
that simple.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like it would have made sense if he was targeting fathers that were piss drunk asshole fathers to see if they would save their sons, and if they didn't even try, then he would kill the son. But it wasn't really about that. It was like, here are some trials to see if you're motivated enough to do it, but these trials can kill you, which will also kill your son.
Yeah. Makes zero sense, unfortunately. Um, and one more nitpick we have to dive into is how lame and just rude to the player, honestly, the reveal that Scott is the killer is. The reveal just comes again, as Luke's already described, through a series of flashbacks and is revealed. For example, one of the main big things that happens while you're playing as Scott is you're visiting um, an old man in his clock workshop, basically his like watch repair shop,
Antique shop.
antique shop, yeah. And while you're there, the guy suddenly dies, and you're like, oh, what the heck? Like this killer must have suddenly somehow got in here and escaped, whatever. And then it's revealed in another flashback that, or in a flashback later on in the game, that you're actually the one. Scott is actually the one that murdered that character in the middle of that scene while you're supposedly having full control of the character. So that is incredibly lame.
It's like a sin.
It's a cardinal sin because it. I mean, you described it already. You're intentionally tricking the audience because they're taking a scene where you're seemingly in full control, and a game that like touts giving you full control as well. That's like its whole selling point is giving you interactive storytelling. However, it totally strips that moment away from you. Doesn't even like imply that anything that you're involved at all really in that scene per se, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, here's what actually happened. Like your scene didn't actually play out how you thought it did, and it's just so bad. And then even like there's this option in the game, or not option, but you can hold down when the triggers. I'm not sure what it was for you, because you play on PC, but you know, hold down a button, and you'll get like thought bubbles. You can basically hear what your character's thinking in the moment, and then like as you're looking over the dead body, Scott's like, ah, oh, poor guy, he didn't deserve to go like that, like showing sympathy and things like that, being like, oh, who did this, you know? And it's just a very, very lame
Trickery.
trick,
Yeah.
and a very, very lame way to try and fit in, justify, or showing that, oh, there were hints the whole time Scott was, of course, the killer. And where there were maybe like really small hints, there's a certain point where he talks about typewriters and he has one in his office, but there wasn't. It wasn't enough to justify. There was no pay. It didn't make sense as a payoff.
I got a quote for you in relation to this. So Eurogamer interviewed David Cage when the game came out, and the first thing they ask him is, I guess you must have done a lot of focus testing of the game. Did you find that people worked out who the killer was before the end? David Cage says, no one. 70 people did the user test. None of them found out who the killer was before we reveal it. Well, of course they didn't find out who the killer was.
Yeah.
You literally like set up a scenario where it's impossible to deduce it as an audience because you give an alibi outright to the murderer by not showing in the moment that he killed a guy. Because like the way you experience that moment that you're describing as the audience is you just walk to the back and he's dead. You don't, in a game where you're interacting as that character, it's mind-blowing. I know I've said that it's mind-blowing a lot, but it really is mind-blowing.
It's bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Anyway, are you done with nitpicks?
Yeah, we've torn into this game quite a bit.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of nitpicks. I think I've kind of gone through them throughout the episode here. Talked about the asthma thing. That was weird. Scott Shelby doesn't reload his gun once after shooting it 20 times. Kind of weird. 20 bullets, 20 people instantly dead. No asthma. Doesn't make that much sense. There's just an evil tortured doctor in the game. I guess this game came out a little bit around the Saw era of movies, and you know they just want to throw that in there. It's
This
fun.
game is like a really shitty Saw.
Yeah, dude,
It's like
insanely
bullshit
shitty.
torture porn, really, really bad Saw.
Yeah, totally. And that was one thing I wanted to say too is I really do think that this game plot is like a product of its time where like a lot of people probably at the time felt like this was kind of a bridge between what movies were doing that was working, which was creating like a kidnapping movie or a torture movie or like an insane psychopathic murder movie and bridging it into a video game setting with light interactivity. That's
It's
why I think people praise this game. It's the only logical explanation I can think of why people like this game when it came out.
it's like he saw Taken, and then he saw Saw, and was like, oh, there's something there.
There's something
There's
there. Let me make this
something
into a
there. Just gotta
game.
throw those together.
Yeah. And
Um,
some other
yeah.
nitpicks, real quick. The characters possess information that they're not supposed to possess for whatever reason. Madison knows where Ethan is after the third trial. For some reason, she just knows this. There's a certain part where when she finds out who the origami killer is, she calls Norman. You have the ability to call the FBI agent, even though you've never interacted with him or have
Really,
his
I
phone
didn't get
number.
that option
Yes,
even.
that is a thing in this game. It makes zero sense. I just it's insane. It's insane. I think I rest my case.
Love it. Alrighty, so Lucas, would you play other games from this developer? I hope
I
you
would.
would try. I'd love. I really want us to do Heavy Rain at some point now.
You mean Detroit Become Human?
Excuse me. Yeah, Detroit
Yeah.
Become Human.
I would like to play more games, and I think I think I would play games by this developer to revalidate or fully validate my opinion on David Cage and the type of director and writer that he is. Um, Kind of like the Joseph Faraz thing, where we've historically have not been a fan of his on this pod and kind of drilled him into him a lot, but the only way we can really form the most solid opinion is to play all of their games. So I will play more games by David Cage, but God, I hope that they are at least more fun than this game.
Yeah. We've already established I've played many of his games, so the answer for me is unfortunately still yes. If he releases anything new, I'll still try it because I'm curious. But we have now reached the point where no, we haven't. I lied. Lucas, does this have your approval?
No.
Yeah.
Nope.
This the note I put down for this was for whether or not this has my Segoy of approval.
Right.
Meh.
Meh. No.
All right, so we have now reached a point where Lucas and I will each give our ratings out of 10. 10 plus 10 equals 20. We will give a singular rating out of 20, and that is the ultimate rating. It usurps every other game publication, whether it's IGN, Metacritic, even the people can't get it over us. We'll leave it at that. Lucas, are you ready to give your rating on the count of 3?
I am.
All righty. 1, 2, 3, 4.
3. Okay.
Okay.
That's a 7.
I started at a 6.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
throughout this conversation, it got lower.
Yeah. Me too. I started off as a 4, and now I've moved it down to a 3.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Wow. Yeah.
Pretty bad.
Whew. That was rough. And to the good people out there, to the good listeners of Thanks for Playing, if you love this game, and you played it years ago, I would recommend you play it again with a fresh set of eyes, and see how you feel about it. If you still love it, we'd love to hear why you still love it. And Matt, if they want to tell us why they still love it, where can they find us online?
You can find us online. Thanks for playing pod at gmail.com. Again, that is thanks for playing pod at gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok at TFE Podcast. That's TFE Podcast with an S at the end. As well, you can also find our website, thanksforplaying.live, at thanksforplaying.live. And you can find a link to our Discord on that website, as well as in the link trees of our social medias as well on Instagram and Twitter. So come hang out, everyone. It's a good time. Come join the Discord. We got a fun group there. Shout outs to our most recent members, Prophetic Gamer and T-Sue. Neither have yet made their debut chatting in the Discord, but I'm sure after calling them out, they will. And if you want to hang out with your good buddy Matt, you can find me on Twitter at Good Idea Matthew.
All right. And if you want to find me online, I would highly recommend the Discord server. It's probably the place where you'll have the most amount of interaction with me. But you could also follow me on Instagram at Good Idea Lucas. And Matt, I just want to kind of point out to the audience here. We do have a little bit of fun interactions going on in the Discord. Every Monday, we are now doing Super Metroid Monday, where you will be given a venue on all of your video game hot takes.
Yes.
Today was the first week where we officially did it, first day where we officially did it. And we got some pretty hot takes in here. Mine, I'll just shout out mine, just for the super hot take of the week. The best Zelda game is Majora's Mask. Part 2, Skyward Sword's a bad game. That's Lucas's hot take for the week. Listen for the podcast for more.
Love that. I actually did not have a hot take this week, unfortunately, but I will, however, give a shout out to Orion, who believes that Final Fantasy IV, also known as Final Fantasy II, when it was released in the US on the SNES, is the best Final Fantasy ever. Hot take, Orion.
Super hot take.
And our good buddy Mickey is not a fan of Skyrim, which I was upset about personally. And Dragoon, good old Dragoon, Tauren a Pokemon, left no one standing, woke up and chose violence. Kidding, Dragoon. We know we love you. We enjoyed your hot take. All right, everyone. This has been. Thanks for playing. Catch you next time. And happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Jason!